Here are 10 bizarre reasons why people in ancient times might have wrongfully accused you simply for being yourself. Reason 1. Being left-handed. Today, if you're left-handed, it's nothing special. But if you lived in the Middle Ages, that could have gotten you labeled as a witch. Back then, people believed the left hand was the devil's hand. Most people wrote and ate with their right hand, so anyone using their left was considered strange and abnormal. They didn't understand why someone would be left-handed, so they assumed that person must have magic or be hiding something terrifying. In some places, children were even forbidden from writing with their left hand. If someone insisted on using their left hand, they could be punished, forced to switch hands, or even suspected of being involved with magic. Sounds illogical, doesn't it? Accused of witchcraft just for writing with your left hand. So if you're left-handed, be proud, because in ancient times, you would have been seen as very powerful, even if you didn't want to be. Reason 2. Having an unusual birthmark. Today, a birthmark is just a small mark on the skin, but in the Middle Ages, if you had a strange birthmark, a mole, or an unexplained scar, you could have been called a witch. People back then believed witches would have the devil's mark on their bodies. They called it a witch's mark, meaning a mark from the devil. Those with these marks were thought to have signed a contract with dark forces, and it was considered proof to condemn them. If you simply had a large mole growing in an unusual spot, like behind your ear, under your foot, or on your neck, people could believe you used it to let the devil suck your blood. Many innocent people were condemned simply because their bodies had natural markings. No other evidence was needed. Just a birthmark was enough to be arrested. Terrifying, isn't it? So if you have birthmarks, count yourself lucky to be living in the present, and not a few hundred years ago. Reason 3. Living alone with black cats. Do you like cats? If the answer is yes, then congratulations. In the Middle Ages, you might have been called a witch just for owning black cats. Back then, black cats were considered pets of the devil. People believed witches often kept black cats to help them cast spells or spy on others. Some even believed black cats could transform into spirits, or were witches themselves in disguise. And if you lived alone, without a husband, wife, or children, you'd be even more suspicious. A person living in solitude, constantly talking to black cats? Very suspicious in the eyes of people back then. In reality, many elderly women who lived alone and loved cats were accused of witchcraft simply because they were different from the majority. There was no magic involved, just misunderstanding and fear. So if you have a cute black cat at home, hug it tight, and be thankful you don't live in a time when loving animals was a major crime. Reason 4. Being able to read and write. Today, everyone goes to school and learns to read and write. But if you lived in the Middle Ages, especially if you were a woman, being literate could have led people to believe you were a witch. Back then, very few people could read. Most books were written in Latin, and only monks or scholars learned it. If an ordinary person knew how to read books, write, or even record strange formulas or symbols, it would have seemed bizarre. And if you were a woman who could write, even more dangerous. They would think you were learning magic, writing spells, or communicating with some force. Some people were accused of witchcraft just for keeping a notebook with herbal remedies or cooking recipes. Suspected of witchcraft just for being literate? It sounds illogical, but it really happened. So if you're studying, writing in a diary, or reading a book, be proud. Because if you lived in ancient times, you wouldn't just be smart, you'd be terrifying too. Reason 5. Making medicine from herbs. Today, using herbal remedies to cure ailments is normal. But in the Middle Ages, if you knew how to brew herbal concoctions, apply leaves, or make tea from roots to cure coughs or stomach aches, you might have been accused of using magic. Back then, people didn't understand medicine or herbs as well as we do now. If you made a herbal remedy that helped someone feel better, they wouldn't think you were skilled. Instead, they'd fear you were using charms or making a deal with the devil. Many women who practiced herbal healing were arrested, interrogated, and condemned as witches just because they knew too much about plants. Even simple things like ginger water or peppermint leaves were once considered mysterious poisons. Some people were even suspected of knowing how to make others fall in love with herbal tea. It's strange how helping people get well was seen as dangerous, isn't it? Luckily, now, making ginger tea just makes you thoughtful, not a witch. Reason 6. Being too good at cooking. Do you think being a good cook is commendable? In the Middle Ages, if you cooked too well, you might have been suspected of being a witch. Back then, when people didn't know much about spices, seasoning, or food preservation, it was rare to make food that was both fragrant and delicious. If someone ate your dish and found it surprisingly good, they might think you had cast a spell on the food. Some people were accused of bewitching or seducing others just for making unusually fragrant bread or a stew with a strange aroma. People believed witches could make food that would make others obey them, become infatuated, or be enchanted without knowing it. Of course, the truth was, they were just better cooks. But at that time, excessive talent was sometimes mistaken for magic. So if you're a good cook, be glad you live in modern times, where you're called a great chef, not a pot and pan witch.